Hey guys, welcome back to Magic TV. My name's Craig. It's 12 o'clock on a Sunday, which means it's time for a Q&A. This is where I take all the questions that you've asked over the course of the week and I try to answer them to the best of my ability. Now, this is going to be a slightly different Q&A this week. I'm going to address one question and one question only. I'm going to address a question that gets brought up on this channel daily. It gets brought up so many times it's ridiculous, which is, how do I market a magic product? How do I market a magic product and make sure it's successful? Because honestly, if you saw the amount of questions I get, if you see the amount of messages I get asking variations on this question, and then I'll have people that have maybe put something out through Penguin and they've gone through the Penguin Partner Program and I've got a download on Penguin and they're messaging me going, I'm really frustrated. I put this product out with Penguin and nobody's bought it. Nobody's interested in it. Why have not? This is the best trick in the world. Why are people not buying this trick? Then I'll have other people that say, hey, I've got an amazing trick. I want to market it through a company. Which company should I market it through? How do I get on their radar? How do I get their attention? Some people say, hey, how do I make sure that when I market a product, it's going to be successful? Lots of different variations on the theme. So today, that's what I'm going to address. This is going to be the ultimate guide to creating, selling, and marketing a successful magic product. That's what this is going to be. And you can always tell that I take these things seriously when I have notes. I have notes here, detailed notes, because I didn't want to miss anything out. Now, I've been around, in and around the magic industry for a very long time. Anybody who's been on this channel will know that. And the reason I just want to tell you that ahead of time is the information and the advice that I'm giving you here comes from a position of experience. So many years ago, obviously, when I first got into magic, I was on the Wizard Product Review with David Penn. And during that process, I got to spend a lot of time on calls with Murphys, on calls with various different magic producers, because at the time, World Magic Shop was one of the biggest shops in Europe. Then obviously I released all of my own magic. Many years ago, I released some great tricks, some really popular things like Chop and Keymaster and Slim were really popular. So, and you know, I got invited by Murphys over to America. I spent the day in their office, hanging out with all of their staff, showing them magic. I spent the day going around the warehouse. Thank you very much to Tim Trono for that. And seeing how their operation works. I've also personally know pretty much all of the people that run the main magic production companies around the world. You know, I've known Andy for years. I've known Josh for years from Vanishing Ink. I know a lot of the guys at Murphys. I know obviously people from Alakazam, but everywhere, 1914, the Penguin, the list goes on and on and on. So I know all of these people. And since I've come back into magic, you know, from my hiatus for a few years, I've been releasing a lot of magic. So, well, you haven't seen a lot of magic being released, but I've brought out, obviously, Gossip with Alakazam. I've got other things coming out with Alakazam. I brought out Visible with the 1914. I've got lots of other things coming out through Visible, through 1914. I've been working very closely on a few things with Penguin. I've been working very closely on a few things with Murphys. I've actually been working with Prop Dog as well on a couple of things. The point is, I know this industry inside out and back to front. I also have a background in marketing, so I understand marketing. I understand how to make a product successful. And just look at Visible, for example. Visible was a very big, successful product. It did really well, and that wasn't by luck, that was by design. So I want to run through exactly what you need to do to create a successful product and market it and bring it to market and have all of your goals and dreams as aspirations kind of achieved, if that makes sense. The one thing I will say before I go into this is, don't think that you're going to get rich from marketing a product. If you've got one product that you're going to market, you're probably not going to get rich from it. Especially when you consider all of the hard work, time and effort it's going to take to get you to a position from having the idea through to marketing it. You know, it's a fun process. That's one of the reasons I do it. It's great feeling knowing that other people do your trick, but you're never going to, and it may be a nice side income, but it's never going to replace your main income unless you take it very seriously. People like Greg Wilson, people like Jay Sankey that are going out all of the time, releasing new magic all of the time, lecturing all over the world, then maybe. And lecturing, by the way, is a great way to create income as a magician that creates magic. Because once you have 4 or 5 original ideas, you can put a lecture together, you can sell that lecture, you get paid for the lecture, and then people will buy the stuff afterwards. It's a great way to make money. The reason a lot of people do lecture tours is because you can actually make good money from doing a lecture tour. Anyway, I digress. So I'm going to be going through absolutely everything, step by step. But like I said, there's a lot of information. If I miss anything out, please let me know in the comments, and I will address it on the next Q&A. And obviously, we're going to be back to normal with the next Q&A as well. So when we do the next Q&A, I'm going to be back to normal, and any questions that I've missed, I will address for you. So there you go. That's where we're at. Let's get straight on with the first point. So point number 1 is understanding that there are different routes to take if you're going to bring a product to market. Now, I'm kind of jumping ahead because there's a lot of stuff that you need to do before you pick the producer that you want to work with, or if you even want to work with a producer at all. But before we get to that point, before we even start on what you need to do beforehand, I just want to address this because a lot of people kind of don't realize this, but this is absolutely the case. There's lots of different routes that you can take to get your product to market. Now, I've gone through these. Now, the first one is Murphy's Magic. You can go directly with Murphy's Magic. Now, the thing with Murphy's is they sell their products to every single magic dealer around the world. They are the world's #1 wholesaler of magic. So if your product goes into Murphy's, it's going to hit the magic shops of every single magic shop around the world. And there's producers that work with Murphy's. So a perfect example is 1914. In 1914, when they released their products, they put their products into Murphy's. So if you work with a production company like the 1914, and there's lots of other examples, your product will ultimately, eventually end up in Murphy's, right? But getting it in Murphy's, if you want to get a name for yourself, if you want to get a big name for yourself, then absolutely you need your product going into Murphy's because it's going to provide you maximum exposure, which is important when you're first starting out. If you want to get a reputation as a creator, you want as many people as possible to see your product. You want it to go into as many shops as possible. Getting it into Murphy's is absolutely the way to do that. Now, Murphy's are actually very picky when it comes to who they work with. They've got their own creative team, headed up by George, and there's also Lloyd in there, Titanus, obviously, Javier is in there, Matt is in there. There's 5 or 6 people in their creative team. And maybe one day I'll go into the infrastructure of Murphy's and how Murphy's actually works, because it's a lot bigger than you can possibly realize. But if you're just bringing a product to market, there's a very good chance that you'll be working with one of those gentlemen, all of those gentlemen, and you'll have a Skype call with them, regular Skype calls. And the nice thing about Murphy's is if you can get a product in there with them, and Murphy's go, yes, we want to work with you directly, they will push your product to the moon, if that makes sense. And they're a wonderful company to deal with from that side of things as well, because all of those men that I mentioned earlier on, they are super creative geniuses, and they will help you make your product better. And that they understand how to market a product. Of course they do. There's nobody with as big a reach as Murphy's. So the first option is go directly with Murphy's. The second option is to go with another magic producer. Now, there's lots of different magic producers all over the world. There's lots and lots of different magic producers. Some of them will put their products through Murphy's. So if you work with this producer, you'll eventually get into Murphy's. Some of them won't. So a perfect example of that is Alakazam. Alakazam Magic do not work directly with Murphy's. They don't put that. They used to, but they don't anymore. So all the newer items, if you look for Gossip, you're not going to find it in all the different magic shops because it's brought to market directly through Alakazam. The advantage of working with a producer like this is because they're not going through Murphy's. They'll normally be really invested in the product, and they'll really, really want to work hard to push it. And they normally have their tribe of people that follow them. Alakazam is a perfect example. They have their own tribe of people that follow them. And the other thing that Alakazam do is, although they don't work with Murphy's, they do work with select magic shops around the world. So you'll see all of the Alakazam products, when they're released through Alakazam, going into different shops around the world as well. So Alakazam is a perfect example. Another example is Penguin Magic. Penguin are a great company to work with. I'm a very big fan of Sean Dunn. Penguin are great, but they don't put their products directly into Murphy's. Now, they might wholesale their products to various different magic shops. So if you look at Prop Dog, for example, they carry the whole Penguin Magic range, but the advantage of somewhere like Penguin, for example, is they are probably the biggest magic shop in the world. So they've got a huge mailing list, they've got a huge reach. If they put a product on their mailing list and say, hey, check this out, it's probably going to shoot to the moon and back when it comes to the amount of people buying it. But they don't go through Murphy's. So if you put a product into Penguin, they'll market it to their own people, absolutely. And they'll probably wholesale it to some smaller magic shops as well. But what they won't do is they won't put it in Penguin. So understand that the producer that you work with is very, very important. Different producers have different deals. We'll talk about deals later on, but different producers have different deals. It's important to understand their deals. It's important to understand how they plan on marketing it. It's important to understand their reach. Okay, now the third option here is self-publishing. You can self-publish a product yourself. And you see people like David Jonathan do this. So David Jonathan is a great example because he'll put stuff out through, he brought out Snaps, for example, with Penguin. He's brought things out through Murphy's Magic directly. He's worked with, I know he's got something out coming soon with the 1914. He's got lots of different companies he works with, but he also self-publishes. So one of his newest tricks, Toucan, and one of my favorite tricks of David Jonathan's, Threesome, has come out directly through him. He's got his own website and he markets the product himself. Now, self-publishing can be really great. I mean, the advantage of self-publishing is that you're not having to give X amount of your income to a company. And you're self-publishing, so you're getting all of that income yourself, which sounds really good, but there's a couple of disadvantages. The first disadvantage is you have to do all of the work yourself. So if you've got a gimmick, for example, that's needed in order to do this trick, you've got to create the gimmick yourself. You've got to go through all of the trials and tribulations of creating that gimmick. You've got to spend all of the money that you would need to spend to make that gimmick. And then you've got to film it yourself, you've got to produce it yourself, you've got to market it yourself. And if people don't know who you are, if you haven't got a particularly great reputation as a creator, or if you haven't got a particularly big reach, you're never going to achieve the levels of coverage as you would working with a big producer because you haven't got the mailing list there. And that's just one example. You haven't got the social media following. And also, as a self-published person, you might not get it in Murphy's. It might just be through your website. So it's not going to be in any of the magic shops. So the reach is going to be limited. You're going to have to spend a lot more time marketing that product yourself as well. So it can cost time and money, unless it's a trick or a download that doesn't require a gimmick. So for example, again, we'll use David Jonathan as an example. When he brought out Threesome, that's not requiring a gimmick. That just requires a download. That would have probably been a fairly easy one to do. And because David's released stuff through lots of other companies as well, he's got a big reach. People know who he is. So when he releases a download, it's an easy download to produce. There's not a gimmick. And hey, boom, job done. I've got something coming out next year with Murphy's that's gone through probably about 15 prototypes at this point. It is an absolute nightmare to get this working how we want it to. And we're almost there. We're still not there right now. But if I'd have to have paid for that process, that would have cost me a fortune. But they're invested in this particular product and they're going back and they're going, right, okay, we're going to ship you over another one now. How does this look? No, this isn't right because of this. So that's something that you need to bear in mind as well. There's going to be an outlay if you do self-publish. The next option is a magazine. Now, we'll talk later on about getting a reputation as a creator, but you might create something that you don't want to sell. Maybe it's good, but it's not good enough as a product. Putting a trick in a magazine, and there's still magazines out there that you can do that with. Vanish magazine is a great example. Genie magazine, speaking to Cos at Cosmo Magic and getting something out through Real Magic is another example. Putting that out there is just going to help your reputation. People are going to see it and they're going to be like, oh, who's this guy? Oh, this is really good. Oh my gosh, this is amazing. You don't have to sell everything. You don't just have to come up with an idea and go, oh wow, there's a download, let's do this. It's not the case, right? So you can put it out through a magazine. And then another one that I actually just added to the list before I started filming is YouTube. Because these days YouTube is a viable way to build up an audience. Like, you're watching this video because you are part of my subscribers, or you've heard of Magic TV, or whatever the reason is. I've built up an audience through the use of YouTube. Now, if you have an original idea, maybe you want to put it out as a tutorial on YouTube. I've seen people do this, and if enough people watch it and like it, you get more subscribers, That's a really legit way of building up an audience, which is ultimately going to help you if you release something else through a different production company. If that kind of makes sense. So there's I think the most important thing to take home from this point is there's lots of different routes that you can go down when it comes to releasing a trick. And you really need to think through these. And in a bit, we'll talk about deals, and we'll talk about how the deals are structured. But it's important to understand right from the get-go, there's lots of different routes how you can actually market your product. Okay, so now you've got that out of the way, let's go into part two. Part two is you get an idea and you make sure it's good. Okay, you get an idea, you make sure it's good. That's really, really important. You need to have the idea, and people can tell if it's a half-arsed, half-baked idea. I know that there's magicians out there, I'm not going to name names, but I know there's magicians out there that have released magic that they've never performed in the real world. They've never even tried it out on people. They've just had this brain fart and they've released it, and that's their prerogative. But the thing is, you only have one chance to make a good product. If your first product, especially your first product, if your first project is terrible and just awful, then the next time you release something, people aren't going to be paying anywhere near as much attention as they did the first time. Also, it's going to be harder to work with a production company. If the first trick that you brought out, people said it was terrible or it created no interest at all, why should a production company, if you want to work with a production company, work with you? Because you have to understand, if you go through Murphy's, if you go through any of these production companies that we talked about, they are a business. Let's be clear about that. Their business is to make money. They look at you and they look at your trick and they think, okay, what's the cost to me for doing this? How much is it going to cost me to take this idea and make it a reality? And now how much can I sell it for? And how many people will buy it? What sort of profit will I make? That's how business works. You have income, or you have turnover, you have expenses, and then you have profit, right? So they're going to be looking at you, and that's the cold hard facts here, which is when you're releasing a product, it's all about business. Now, I know that there's a lot of people going out there going, oh, well, magic should be about an art form, it should be about art, we shouldn't be trivializing it, and I understand where you're coming from, I really do. But the bottom line is, when you're releasing a product, it's all about, especially to a production company, especially to a wholesaler, it's all about, am I going to make money? Because people don't want to lose money on the product. And one of the ways of doing that is making sure that everything that you've ever brought out is absolutely 100% top notch. So how do you do that? Well, you have your idea. You don't immediately then start submitting it to production companies. You have the idea, you make it up. Once you've made it up, you start going out to various different places and you start working it. And if you're not a performer, there's people that aren't performers. I've interviewed them on this channel. People like Joe Rindfleisch isn't a performer, which is fine. There's, you can perform it to friends and family. You can show it to somebody who is a performer that you know, and you can say, hey, can you work this for me and give me your feedback, whatever it may be. That trick needs to be worked. And the reason is, I have never seen a trick that hasn't improved after being worked on in the real world. We've all been there, right? When we've had this idea for this trick, and in our head it's going to be the best trick ever, and we perform it to a group of people at a gig or down the pub or wherever it may be, and they're just like, it doesn't get a reaction. And you're like, man, why did that not get a reaction? Well, that's the process you need to go through. You analyze why it didn't get a reaction, and you go, okay, well, maybe if I tweak this, let me try it now. Okay, that was a bit better, but this didn't work. Let's try that. Okay, that didn't work. Let's try that. And what will happen is, over time working this, you'll completely change the trick, and it'll become so much better. Chop is a perfect example. When I brought out my routine chop many years ago, if I brought it out when it was first thought of or conceptualized, it would have been one move. That's it. It would have been one move. When I bought it out, there were about 15 different moves, and it was more of a toolbox that you could use. If I then bought out Chop Again now, I've probably got close to 40 or 50 moves because I've been working on it more in the last 8 or 9 years. So the point I'm trying to make is you need to make sure that the idea is worked in and good. You need to make sure that you've got a sound presentation for it, whatever your style is. You've got to make sure it's entertaining. And also, you've got to make sure it's something that a magician would want to buy ultimately, because if your goal for creating this product is to sell it to magicians, you have to understand that it has to be a sellable product. It has to be something that magicians will buy. So, for example, if you're doing, if you're doing a really boring dealing trick that's really, really boring, a lot of people aren't going to be into that. It might fool a magician, it might be a magician fooler, but less people are going to be into that because that's just not going to be floating their boat. But if you come up with, like an ACAN, for example, ACAN's one of these things that everybody, it's different over the years. I remember when I was on the Wizard product review, the thing that used to sell, no matter how, every time something came in for review, if it was a self-levitation, people would go gaga for it. They would just go absolutely nuts for it. And you just knew if you released a self-levitation, people would buy it. The last few years, it's been ACAN. If people bring out an ACAN, you know that people are going to buy that. And now it seems to be wallets. Everybody's bringing out a wallet. Every week there's a new wallet coming out, right? And wallets have always been popular, but there's always something that will grab the attention. You know that you bring out a wallet, it's going to get a big thread count on the Magic Cafe. And that's just, that's another side point, which is understanding the market, understanding what magicians are into, understanding what magicians are into. So when you have this idea, make sure it's something that will float the boat of the majority of magicians. If you're bringing out a multi-phase card routine that's kind of really boring, it's not going to be as interesting as think about the ad copy. Think about how you would sell it. So with Visible, for example, and I'll talk about Visible because it's the latest thing I've bought out, and it was very popular. Visible, it's a very simple concept. 12 original ideas with an invisible deck. These ideas are self-working. You can do them anytime, anywhere, and it'll help you take your invisible deck, which you've been doing the same thing with your entire life, and it'll turn it into a tool. Well, that's a really interesting concept because people like invisible decks. Every magician in the world has an invisible deck. If you tell them that you can use that same tool and create a whole bunch more routines for it that they can do immediately because there's no skill, that's something that kind of floats the boat of a lot of magicians. So that's a perfect example. So understand the magic market, understand what people are into, make sure that your product fits that market, but also make sure it's fit for purpose, make sure it works, make sure it looks good, show it around, absolutely show it around if you want to. And I've got a point here, which is timestamp it. When you've got this idea, film it, show it to somebody and have somebody film it, upload it up onto YouTube, as an unlisted video or a private video. And the reason you want to do that is because you've then got proof. So if somebody that you've shown this trick to, and I know this is terrible, that you can't trust people, but unfortunately that's the case. If you show it to somebody and then they bring it out themselves, or you see a thing that goes, hey, I'm bringing this out and it's from that person, you go, hang on, whoa, I was doing this at this time and we did this and blah, blah, blah. Just, it would help having a time-stamped video on YouTube. So make sure you go down that route. I spoke to somebody just the other day, and I don't want to name names, but I spoke to somebody just the other day, and they said that there was a particular magician that's fairly well known, that a lot of people will know, and they were at they saw another magician do a particular trick that they were planning on releasing, and before they actually released it, this person had pitched the idea to Murphys themselves and sold it to Murphys. So, unfortunately, that can happen. So you need to protect it. Only show it to people that you trust, and make sure you timestamp it and put it on YouTube. But more importantly, make sure it's really good. Okay, so then the third point that I have here, point number 3, is make sure that you've got your crediting correct. Make sure that you've done your research and show it around to knowledgeable people. When you've got the point that you're happy with it and you don't think you need to tweak it anymore, make sure that it's an original idea. Now, you should have really kind of checked it was an original idea beforehand, but this is kind of definitely the time to make sure, before you start shipping this around, which is going to be the next point, you want to make sure that this is original to you. And I'm going to give you a couple of examples. I'm going to give you 3 examples, and they're all examples of me. So everybody knows the Red situation, right? Everybody knows Red. I'm not going to go into it now. There's multiple videos on this channel if you search for it. But that's really the driving force, the main reason why I left the Magic community. I left the Magic community because of the backlash for Red, because ultimately I released a trick that was not my trick. It was by Bob King, and it was called New Wave Prediction, and I released it as Red. And, you know, I'm not going to get into it now, as I said. I'm really not going to get into it now. I'm not going to explain the reasons behind it and what happened and what we did with it. But ultimately, that wrecked my reputation. I released up until that point really good tricks. Everybody was really happy, you know, that lots of really good tricks. Everybody raved about the stuff that I brought out. Then I brought this thing Red out, and immediately everything turned. Everyone hated me, man. It was horrible. And I said then I would not release another trick ever, because I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it. I couldn't face the backlash. Every day I'd have messages, I'd have things, I'd have emails, I'd switch on my computer, and the Magic Cafe was pinging me every couple of seconds. It's a horrible situation, because perception was I ripped somebody's trick off. And even now on this channel, to this day, we still have people coming on here going, oh, didn't you rip somebody's trick off 10 years ago? Like, it's like, hello, we've moved on. But, you know, and I've addressed this over and over again, but don't make the mistake I made. It will, absolutely will bite you in the ass. And you never, ever want to go down the route of doing that. So be careful. Make sure you've got your research in there. Make sure you've got your crediting in there. Because once the Magic community, it's a small niche community, once the Magic community have decided that you have wronged them, or that you have wronged another creator, it's going to be a very long, hard road to get your reputation back. Trust me, it is a very long, hard road to get your reputation back. And you know, I followed my advice. I remember showing Red to some very knowledgeable magicians, and they hadn't seen it before. But whatever, the point is, you want to make sure that you don't go down the same route that I did. I released one of the things, before I came back, I released one of the things after that, which was my DVD parlor. And the only reason I released that is because it was already in production. It had already been filmed, or we had it in the shooting schedule or something. And I considered not doing it, but I did it. We did parlor. And Parlor has some amazing stuff on it. I've had so many people rave about the material. My card in the box, which everybody raves about, that's on there. There's a whole bunch of stuff that's on there that I'm so proud of. And yet it got absolutely ripped. If you look at the Magic Cafe, it got absolutely ripped to shreds. And the reason people were ripping it apart, a lot of the time, they were bringing up Red. And they were like, well, you know, this guy can't be trusted and blah, 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 blah. So it affects future Magic releases as well. You screw up, it's not just going to affect that release. It's going to ruin your reputation, and it's going to affect other releases. So make sure that the credit is right. Visible, for example, once we put everything together, and I was doing everything. A friend of mine, Roman Armstrong, brought to my attention, and if you don't know Roman, he's part of Slightly Unusual, my entertainment agency, and he brought. I was talking about Visible online. I think it was in a video, and I was talking about this Invisible Deck project, and I mentioned a Triumph, and Roman messaged me and said, "Hey, here's a link to Steve Bedwell. He's got a Triumph that's very similar to what you've just described." And I watched the link and I was like, man, that is very, very similar. And then I remember years ago seeing him do that. And then I recreated this trick in a different way, different handling. If you've seen Visible, you'll know that, but still not different enough from Steve Bedwell's original routine. So I reached out to Steve and I said, "Hey, Steve, hope you're well. Big fan of your work, blah, 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 blah." I explained the whole situation to him and I said, "Can I include this on the project and put a credit into you?" and fully explain that, this is based on your routine, and talk all about that. And he was like, yeah, absolutely, 100%. Thank you very much for asking. And that's the right way of doing things, yeah? And then we put Visible out, and when we put Visible out, somebody else, Dee was showing the project around when it had been edited to make sure that everything was okay. And a very knowledgeable magician came back to us and said, that Triumph routine, by the way, I know you've credited Steve Bedwell, but I'm sure Mike Close did something earlier, a few years earlier. And Dee was like, man, if we can't get this sorted, we're going to have to pull that routine off the project. I was like, okay, let me speak to Mike. So I reached out to Mike Close. We jumped on FaceTime together, and I explained the situation to him, and he was like, yeah, no, it's this, and it's this, and it's this. And if you look at, you'll see it in the Conjuring Archive. All you need is just like a credit on the screen for me. So if you look at Visible on the Triumph routine, you'll see a credit for Mike Close on there as well. The point I'm trying to make is that's the right way of doing things. So make sure that your crediting and your research is correct, and reach out to anybody that you need to reach out to. A lot of the time they'll be fine with it, but you need to reach out to them. Okay, so point number 4 is, and this is really important, and this is probably one of the main points as to why a product will fail when you bring it to market. And the point 4 is develop a reputation, develop a brand as a creator before you even release your first product. Develop a brand, develop a reputation as a creator. So what I mean by that, and as I said at the very beginning of this video, one of the things that people say to me all the time is, I've got this download out with this company and nobody's buying it. What should I do? I've got this download out. And from speaking to people, the kind of the way that most creators think is once they've put this download out, or once they, not so much a product, but once they've put this download out, they just need to sit there now and wait for the money to come rolling in. But that's not the case. There's so many downloads that come out these days. There's so many tricks that come out these days that the only way that you're going to be able to create traction is if you've got a reputation and people who know who you are. Now, there are possible exceptions. If you've brought out a trick that's amazing, if you've got an idea for a trick and it's an incredible trick and it's going to change the game, genuinely change the game, and you've gone to somewhere like Murphy's or Penguin or Vanishing Ink and they've gone, oh my God, that is amazing, we are going to put all of our marketing dollars behind it. Well, you don't need a reputation then, because you're going to be pushed to the moon by whoever it is that you're producing that trick with. But that's not the case 99.99% of the time. A lot of the time, you might bring out a download first of all, or you might be shopping around a really simple trick. And again, it comes back to business. How are you going to make money out of this? How is the company you're going through going to make money out of this? Well, you need to make sure that you've got a reputation. You need to make sure that people know who you are. So how do you get a reputation? Well, like I said, you could have, you could be the guy that's won lots of magic competitions. You could be a really busy professional magician. Let's look at workers, real workers, by the Joel Dickinson and Andrew Dean. Those guys, everybody knows them as busy, working professional magicians. So when they set up their company and started bringing out tricks, a lot of people know who they are because they're well known as performers within the magic industry. It might be, Mark Oberon is a perfect example, because Mark Oberon, he had a reputation not as a creator initially when he first brought out his first trick, which I think was Bang On. When he first put out his first trick, he didn't have a reputation as a creator, but he'd won FISM, he'd won lots of other championships, he was a very busy performer, everybody knew who he was. So when he brought out this trick, people paid attention because everybody knows who Mark Oberon is, right? Does that make sense? Then you look at me, for example, Visible. We've already talked about how Gossip and Visible, the two tricks that I've brought out since coming back to the industry, they were both really successful products. When Gossip launched, it was so successful that it actually broke Alakazam's servers. You look at the live launch, Peter had to go and get on the phone to the internet company because so many people were going on there to try and buy Gossip that it broke Alakazam's site. And then Visible has been in the top 10. It's been number 1 in the top 10 of Murphy's and Vanishing Ink and Penguin Magic for God knows how long now. So both of these products were successful, and I'm going to break down how they were successful. But one of the things is I've got a really good reputation. Now, for the last year, I've been doing Magic TV. I've been busting my arse doing Magic TV. Anybody who watches Magic TV knows the time and effort I put into this. 26 videos a week. I have to create them, I have to write them, I have to edit them, I have to script them, I have to, do all of that stuff. It's not an easy thing to do. It's a full-time job creating the content for Magic TV. And so many people message me going, oh my gosh, the information you give is really valuable. Thank you very much. I don't ask for, sometimes YouTubers have like a little tip jar, virtual tip jar, or they have, hey, join my membership or whatever, or all these different monetizations. I don't do that. I put everything out on YouTube for free and really valuable advice. I've had so many people say to me that the videos I put out, they would have paid money for. A masterclass in this or a masterclass in that. I've had people say the Talk Magic interviews, some of the Talk Magic interviews I do are as good as a Penguin Live or an At the Table. And they take a lot of time and effort to put together. When I do an interview, it's normally 3 hours just shooting the interview. I can't tell you how long it takes to actually edit the bloody thing. Excuse me. So I've developed a lot of followers. I've developed a lot of goodwill. So when a product comes out, I can't tell you the amount of people that go, I just want to support you, Craig. Thank you very much. It's I really like Magic TV. I'm going to buy that product of yours. And that's what's happened. So from a reputation point of view, because I'm doing Magic TV, that's got a lot of people to know who I am. But it's not just got a lot of people to know who I am, it's got a lot of producers to know who I am as well. Because I review products and because I'm very honest about reviewing products, it's fairly obvious to know that I know a good product from a bad product. So Magic producers want to work with people like that because they know that my reputation's on the line. I've already screwed it up once. Anything I bring out is going to be good because or I'm going to believe it's good. And, you look at the reviews for Visible, you look at the reviews for Gossip, you see that the reviews are really, really good and people are happy with the products that are coming out. So, that's one way to develop a reputation. Go and do a YouTube channel. Put a YouTube channel together and do something and get people to know who you are. Get well known within the magic industry. That could be being really active on Facebook groups. It could be really active on the Magic Cafe. It could be going to conventions and getting people to know who you are. It could be putting magazines, putting tricks in magazines and publish them in magazines so that people see who you are. It could be creating an ebook or whatever it may be. You want to have a great reputation because what you want to have is you want to have it so that when you go to a magic producer, they aren't going, well, who's this? And they're basing their decision on whether to work with you solely on the video that you put in. But you want them to kind of go, oh, I know who that is. I know who that is. And with me, and I'm going to use me as an example because I'm doing the video, I've been in this industry for years, many, many years. A lot of producers know me from the Wizard Product Review days. They know me from running Non-Stop Kids Entertainment and Slightly Unusual. They know that I'm a working magician. They know that I go out and I gig all of the time. They know that when I bring a product out, I'm going to put 100% in because that's my reputation on the line. And I've had to work really hard to move away from what happened before. So with Red, and we talked about Red on this video, I had to work really hard to move away from Red. I think if I'd have gone to a magic producer straight after Red happened and said, would you like to work with me? I think every single one of them would have said no. It took me years of stepping away and focusing on my businesses and then coming back and then spending another year working on this YouTube channel to get myself into a position where I'm trusted by producers again. And that was never the intention. The intention was never to come back and start releasing magic. I've been creating magic through the last decade while I've been away from the community. And the stuff that you're seeing now is stuff that I've created while I've been away. Visible wasn't created as a product just to sell. It's not like I went to D. Christopher and said, hey D, I've got these tricks with an invisible deck that I came up with last week, want to sell them. This is stuff that I've been doing for the last 10 years. And it just made sense to put them together as a project. So the point I'm saying is you got to have a great reputation. Now, you also have to have a good trick You have to have a good trick, but you have to have a great reputation. I have, and I'm going to talk about the process of pitching tricks to producers in a bit. But I'm not working with Vanishing Ink. Not working with Vanishing Ink. And that's not because they don't like me. It's not because, in fact, I actually contacted Andy about 6 months ago and had an idea for a trick that I thought would work really well with Vanishing Ink. And I'll be honest with you. And I said, hey, Andy, I'd love to work with you guys. I like this trick. I think it'd be really good. Can I send it to you? He said, we'd love to work with you. Send it over. So I sent it over to them. I did a full performance, and we'll talk about that later on. And they came back and they said, I can see that's amazing. That's really good. Really like it. But we've got other tricks that are coming out that are similar to that. So right now it's a no, but come back to us with something else. Now that trick is now coming out through a different producer. And that's the other thing to consider, that different tricks, just because somebody says no, doesn't mean that's the end of the road. David Jonathan told me the story when I interviewed him of snaps, which I think is one of the best tricks to come out in the last few years. I absolutely adore snaps. And he told me that Penguin, who he eventually ended up marketing it with, it wasn't the first company. He had lots of people turn around and say no. And then eventually Penguin said yes, and the rest is history, right? Well, the trick that I suggested to Vanishing Ink, it's a bloody good trick. It's absolutely amazing. But it didn't fit them at that point. That wasn't because of reputation, that was because of a trick. So there's lots of other factors that you need to consider when you're pitching magic to all these different production companies. But it all revolves around having a great reputation. Having a great reputation both as a creator, having a great reputation so that the magic company that you're wanting to work with will go, well, okay, a lot of people know who this guy is. That's going to help make it a lot easier when we're selling the product, but also somebody who's really easy to work with. If you're a diva, then, you know, that reputation is going to get around the industry very, very quickly. Understand all of these factors. Okay, so point number 5 I've got down here: pick a route, pick a deal. And what I mean by that is you need to pick now. You've now got to a point where you've got a really good product that you're really happy with. You've got it to a position where you think it's going to go really well. You've developed a really good reputation for yourself. Now you need to figure out how you're going to bring this thing to market, right? And I've gone through all of the different routes. I think the important thing to consider is these different routes sometimes have different parts to it. So let's take Penguin, for example, which is a behemoth of a company. Penguin Magic, they have this partner program when it comes to the downloads, and you can apply to be on the partner program. And how the partner program works is you can create a download, you can upload it yourself, and Penguin will push it out for you. But they probably won't put any effort into marketing it. They won't do an email blast about it. They won't put it on their social media. It will literally just appear in the newest items, and if people start buying it, they might push it. But in reality, the amount of downloads that come out through Penguin Magic, they probably won't. But that's the partner program. So it's very easy to get on the partner program. You want to bring out a download, you apply for the partner program, you submit it to, once you're in the partner program, you don't even have to submit each individual trick. You can just blast them out there and they'll just go up, which is why sometimes the quality of downloads on Penguin can fluctuate a little bit, because there's no quality control over the actual partner program. That's a massive difference to working with Penguin directly. I mentioned earlier on, I'm working with Penguin. I'm actually working with them, having tricks produced and going into their studio and filming it. So it's not like I'm going to do it in my house and upload a video that's going to be downloaded. They're investing time and effort and money into creating props for tricks that I'm then going to go over to America to film. They should have come out by now. Here's a thing for you. Penguin was the first company I actually started working with on a few different projects, and they were filmed over here in the middle of the pandemic, but we haven't released them yet, even though they're ready, because both me and Sean Dunn, and I totally agree with him, made the decision that it would be better for me to go over to America to do live performance footage, because when I did them over here, it was in lockdown. There was no live performance footage. I filmed it and showing it to a couple of people in my office, but we're waiting for the pandemic to end. So that's the point. Is that's a very different situation to going in with the partner program. So understand that when you pick a route and you pick how you're going to market this, you pick you have to decide how you're going to work with that company, if that makes sense. And it very much depends on a few different factors. The first factor it depends on is how good is the trick, and be completely honest with yourself here. How good is the trick that you're bringing out? Is it a download? Is it something that you should put out a little bit more low key that's going to develop your relationship, your reputation? Sorry. Look at, there's people that put lots and lots and lots of downloads out all of the time, building up a reputation, and then eventually they'll bring out this big trick. You got to ask yourself a question: what's the trick like that you're bringing out? Is it an amazing trick? If it is an amazing trick, then you want to submit it to the producer. I wouldn't suggest self-publishing. You absolutely can, but unless you've got a reputation and unless you've got a track record of releasing products, I wouldn't bother. What I'd do instead is I'd go through a production company. If you've got an amazing trick, go through Murphy's. Like I said, it is very hard to get Murphy's to say yes to a product. It's got to be really good. It's got to be really, really good. And they've got to see that you're a sellable commodity, right? So again, I'm working with Murphy's on four different projects right now. In various stages of development, but they know I'm a sellable commodity. They see the stats with Visible. They know that Visible got shipped over to them and has done incredibly well. And that's not even them marketing it. That's going through the 1914. They say that I'm a sellable commodity. They know that. So that helps with that rep. Plus, they know who I am. But I wouldn't necessarily go with Murphy's straight away unless it's some incredible product that's going to change the game. I'd start off small and build up, unless you're wanting to just bring out one trick. If you're wanting to bring out one trick and you've got no interest in being a creator and, again, bringing Nicholas Mavretis or a David Jonathan, instead you want to just bring out one thing and that's it, then maybe this is a little bit different. I'm looking at this as somebody who wants to start creating magic on a very regular basis, right? So pick your producer and understand that different producers have different deals. Some producers will buy the rights to a trick. That tends to be use Alakazam as an example. That tends to be what Alakazam do. So they will buy the rights to a trick. You will show them the trick and they'll go, okay, I will pay you this and I will have all the rights to that trick. Which means from then on, they hold the rights to it. You go in and you film it for them and they have the rights to the trick. So they can distribute it however you see fit. Then other companies, Penguin, Murphy's, 1914, a few others, they'll pay you on a royalties basis. So you won't get a buyout, but instead what will happen is you'll get a percentage of the sales forevermore, which is great if you think it's going to be popular, but if it tanks and blows, it's probably not that great, right? So you need to decide which deal you want to go for. And then, if you want just a quick influx in cash, go for a buyout. Say, hey, yeah, you give me this and you can have all the rights to the trick. Okay. You can get the money in your bank account the next day. If you're going to go through a royalties sort of scheme, that's not going to be the case. You're going to have to wait for it to be produced, then the sales figures, and then you'll get money over time as it gets sold. So understand what deal you want to go for, right? The other thing to consider is different production companies. Different tricks work better. So, for example, Gossip felt like an Alakazam trick. It really did. They kind of have a mentalism tinge to all of their tricks. They tend to rely on very clever gimmicks, very clever principles. A lot of their stuff is really easy to focus on presentation, and it's designed for working mentalists and magicians. You look at their back catalogue, you see that. Gossip felt like the perfect trick for Alakazam, right? You look at the Visible Project. The Visible Project, 1914, have got all of these, the art of stagecraft, where it's like a 3-hour download, Revelations, Louis Lavelle, which is a really long download. They like doing deep dives into a particular subject. So I went to Jack Curtis and I went to Dee Christopher and I said, look, I've got this idea for this kind of remixed classic series where we take classic tricks that everybody knows and we showcase the power behind these tricks. Let me give you an example. I gave them a few examples, and the first example I gave them was Visible, which they absolutely loved. I went through the process of showing them some of the routines. They absolutely loved it, and it was greenlit. Yes, let's do it. We're now in the process of preparing for the follow-up to Visible, which is Remix Classics Volume 2. This material has been already worked on over the course of the last few months. It's been created over the last few years, and now it's in a position where we're just getting ready to film, hopefully to come out for around about Christmas time. So the point I'm trying to make here is that felt like a 1914 release. It absolutely did feel like a 1914 release. The stuff I'm doing with Penguin, it feels like a Penguin release. So look at the trick. And David Jonathan, if you haven't watched my interview, I keep bringing this guy up because he's a great creator. But if you have a look at David Jonathan's interview with me on Talk Magic, he says the same thing, because he basically sells himself out to all these different companies, and he says different people feel like different trick. The other thing to consider is I knew when I started releasing Magic, the last thing I brought out really was Red, other than the At the Table lecture, and I just knew that even though I'd been doing Magic TV for a period of time, I just knew I needed to kind of come back with something that was very easy, that would be... Gossip was the perfect trick to come back with, and doing it with Alakazam was the perfect company to do it with. And Peter and Harry and the team and Alakazam, they are incredible to work with. They have this thing that I like to call the Alakazam touch. So they don't just work with you. They don't just go, yeah, here's a trick. Every single trick, Peter will help you refine it and make it better than it actually is, because it's his reputation on the line as well. And Peter and Alakazam have a great reputation. They have a huge following. So when they say something's coming out, you know that a lot of people are going to be interested. So it was the perfect company. And I will always work with Alakazam. I will always work with Alakazam, because I think they're great. There's pros and cons of working with each individual company. There really are pros and cons of working with each individual company. And one day, if you guys are interested, I'll do a follow-up video and I'll compare each company I've ever worked with. And I'll do the pros and the cons, because there are pros and cons with each one. And I will do the pros and cons of each one if you want me to. But understand, you need to pick a deal. So do you want a royalty basis? Do you want a buyout? And by the way, if you're going to choose a buyout, understand that that's your choice. I can't tell you the amount of people that bitch to me and they go, well, I bought out this trick through this company and they paid X amount for the rights, and I know they've sold thousands of them and they've probably made so much money off it. And it's not fair because I've only had this that they gave me right at the very beginning. That was the choice of the person who created the trick. When you created the trick and you marketed it and you decided on the deal, you looked at it and you thought this was the best possible deal for this project. And that is the route that you went down. And you went down that route and you accepted the money and everything was fine. Just because that trick has been now hugely successful, that's not the person's fault that gave you that deal. Okay, don't bitch, don't moan, don't burn bridges. If you want to be a creator, production companies talk. They talk to each other. It's not like they all hate each other. They talk to each other. And if you get a bad reputation, people will find out about it very, very soon. Okay, so then we're on to point number 6. You've picked your production company. You've got all that. That's absolutely fine. So point number 6 is do the shoot. You got to go and do the shoot and be good, man. Be good. This is really important. I have a reputation in this industry of being able to go in and do a shoot in one take. Absolutely everything. And that's because of my experience sitting in front of a camera. Don't forget, I did the Wizard product review for 5 or 6 years in front of a camera every single week. Then after that, I've released lots of tricks over the years. I understand how to sit in front of a camera. I understand how to clearly explain things. These days, I don't need to script the explanation. I understand the routine well enough, and I understand how to explain something well enough that I know I don't need to script it. One of the things that people said over and over again with Visible is that it was explained very clearly without being waffly, and that's an important point. Don't waffle. Don't spend 30 minutes explaining how to do an Elmsley count. You need to be concise, but you need to be clear. You need to get the point across. Don't be a diva when you're on the shoot. You want to go in there. You want to do the shoot, and you want to do it ideally in one take. Show that you know the material. You know, I've heard stories about people that come in and do the shoot, and they do such a bad job, and they're fumbling, and they can't even remember the trick themselves. That's not good. You know, you want to be able to do the best possible job that you can do with this. And also with the live performances, first of all, insist on live performances. As a reviewer of magic, the thing that really bakes my noodle is when I don't see a live performance. The only time it was acceptable was in the middle of a pandemic. It is not acceptable now. Make sure that you've got a live performance in there. People want to see how this trick plays in the real world. Have a live performance. And if you're going to do live performance, make sure it's a bloody good live performance. Make sure that you do it really well and you get really good reactions. What you don't want to do is you pitch this trick to the production company and then you're going out and performing it and it sucks. And on the subject of the shoot, the other thing to consider is you might not want to even do the shoot yourself. If you're not comfortable in front of camera, if you're not one of these people that's comfortable in front of camera, you might want to get the production company you're working with to do the shoot for you on your behalf. Perfect example is Penguin. There's lots of tricks that have been bought out through Penguin through the years, and it's not the creator that's actually explained the trick. It's Nick Lacoppo, or it's Eric Tate, or it's Dan Harlan. Look at Murphy's. A lot of the time, you'll have Javier doing the shoot. I know that there's an incredible trick coming out soon by Angelo Carbone. I think it's going to be the trick of the year, in my opinion. And it's coming out fairly soon, as far as I'm aware. And Angelo's an incredible performer, but Javier is doing the shoot, he's doing the performances, he's doing the explanation, because I know Javier is really comfortable on camera. He can put the trick across a lot better than maybe Angelo can. So the point is, look at yourself as a performer. If you think you can go in and do the shoot well, great, do it. But if not, go with a company where they've got somebody who can do the shoot for you. I've seen it many, many times with Alec Assam. Dave Loosely and Peter Nardi will do the shoot. It very much depends. That's something that you need to consider. Okay, so it's very, very important to consider what you're going to do on the shoot. You need to make sure that you're really good, and you need to make sure that you're picking the best option when you do the shoot. So it's not necessarily you doing it, but you can get somebody else to do it on your behalf. This is all stuff that you really need to think of. Okay, so the next point is, do not rely on the producers to market your trick for you. Some will, some won't. And this is probably the single most important point to everyone who sent me a message or left a comment saying, I've produced a trick and it's not selling very well. What do I do? I'm really upset. I want to take it to another company. That's not the problem. A lot of the time, the people that say this, and I'm going to be real with you right now, they've released a download, maybe through the partner program at Penguin or something like that. It's not done really well. They've not bought any, nobody's bought a download off it, and they throw a hissy fit and they're like, right, it's not sold very well. This is really upsetting to me. Where I'm taking it off Penguin, I'm going to take it somewhere else. Who will have it off me? Well, probably no one. The reason that you've put it in through the Penguin Partner Program is because maybe it's not good enough to go out as a physical product. Again, it comes down to this being a business. Don't expect the production company that you're working with to promote it for you. They will, a lot of the time they will, and we'll talk about this in a second with regards to reputation, but a lot of the time they won't, especially if it's a download or if it's just a download through Murphy's or a download through Penguin and it's not really a big deal. You need to market it yourself. Now, this comes back to having a reputation. If you've got a really good reputation, you can market that. If you build an email list, have a website for your products. If you're going to take this seriously, have a little website. It's cheap enough to design a website now through Wix or something. Have yourself a website, then go on MailChimp and put a contact form on there and capture people's information. And start, do a free lecture on Zoom. Do a free lecture. If you want to take this seriously, do a free lecture on Zoom, promote it to all the magicians, say, hey, it's only 100 people. I'm doing a 1-hour free lecture on Zoom, all unpublished material. Come on in. All I need for you to access this is your email address so I can put you on my mailing list. You do that 5 times, you do a kick-ass lecture, there's 500 people on your email list. Absolutely bang on. Go out and do lectures. And when you go and do lectures, get people's email addresses, build up that email database. So when this product does come out, you can market it to them. You can send them an email going, hey guys, good news, I've got this. Work on building up social media. Work on building up a social media account. work on a YouTube account. You know, I released Visible and I talked about it on this channel over and over and over again. And that absolutely 100% helped sales. Get review copies out to reviewers. When Gossip came out, I said to Peter, I want every single YouTube reviewer to have a copy of this product because I want them to review it. I knew it was good. I believed in the product. And I knew that if the YouTube reviewers would review it, then it would ultimately lead to more sales. So, you know, there's a lot of influence out there. The Wizard Product Review, O'Brien Magic, Tyler Lunsford, Real Magic Reviews with Steve Faulkner. The list goes on and on and on. Magic Orthodoxy, of course, the OG Magic Orthodoxy. There's so many, these people start talking about it, it's going to help your sales. You need to promote this yourself. And this comes back to having a great reputation. Because if you have a great reputation, if you're active on social media, it's why I set up an Instagram account. I didn't have an Instagram account 3 or 4 months ago. And my friend Luke, who works in the office with me, rightfully so, said, dude, you need an Instagram account. So now I post every single day on Instagram and I'm almost at 1,000 followers, which is cool. And that's specifically because it allows me to have a bigger reach. If I've got more people on Instagram and I've got people on Facebook and I've got people on YouTube, when I bring something out, I can shout it from the rooftops on social media and hopefully people will listen. I've got a mailing list. Everybody here who has gone on magictv.org and they have signed up for the mailing list, you'll know that it's a very simple process. Well, I've got lots of people every single day. People sign up for that mailing list. And I choose not to email people unless I've got something really specific, important to say. So, you know, that's something that's really important to consider. How are you going to market this? Yeah, the company will probably market it for you on your behalf that you're working with, especially if they've put time, effort and money into the project. But how else are you going to market it? And the other thing to consider is how Murphy's will market it. Now, Murphy's, obviously, as a company, they have hundreds of tricks coming out every single week. Some of them are their own tricks. Some of them are tricks from producers. Some of them are tricks that people have submitted themselves. Whatever it may be, they have lots of tricks and effects and products that come out all the time. They can't market everything. They just can't market everything. They have something, Murphy's have something called the Golden Pipeline. And what the Golden Pipeline is if they see a product that's really good or they think that they can make money from it, because again, it's a business, remember? So if they see a product they think that's really good or one that's going to capture the attention of people, they will put it into the Golden Pipeline, which means that they will put more effort into marketing that. And you can tell when something's in the Golden Pipeline because a few things happen. First of all, Murphy's will announce it on the Magic Cafe. And you'll see that, you'll see Murphy's from time to time, the latest and greatest section, they will announce something on the Magic Cafe. Not always, but a lot of the time, that's because that product has gone into the Golden Pipeline. And they know that them announcing it on that platform is going to help with sales. Visible went into the Golden Pipeline. You might have seen the interview I did with Luke Dancy. Well, first of all, Luke premiered the trailer on one of the lives on Murphy's. He premiered the trailer and talked about the product and talked about how it's coming soon, and then talked about it the following week. And then on the following week, there was a half-an-hour interview with me and Luke talking about Visible. That's an example of what happens when you get in the Golden Pipeline. So how did Visible get in the Golden Pipeline? How was I able to have Murphy's push that product out more than any other? Well, there's a few different reasons. One, it got produced through Dee Christopher, who's got a great reputation. They look at Dee's stuff. Shadow Wallet was an incredible success. So off the back of the success of Shadow Wallet, the next big release, or one of the big releases, which is Visible, they kind of go, yeah, let's do that as well. But also, I've got a big reputation. Everybody in the world knows who I am. You might love me, you might hate me, you know who I am. You know I've got ethics, I stand for something, and you know that if I'm going to put my name on a product, it's going to be a good product. So, and you know that Murphy's know that because I've got this YouTube channel and I've got this audience that continues to grow every single week, there's a lot of people that listen to what I say. I give lots of advice out online and based, and there's a lot of people that listen to me and therefore might buy a product that I bring out. They know that I've got a background in marketing. They know that I run two very successful companies. So I'm going to market it myself. So all of these factors, and they also know I'm really easy to work with. They know that I'm not going to rest on my laurels, and I didn't. If you saw all the when Visible came out, I don't know if you noticed, there were lots of graphics going up with Visible, and it had the 1914 logo, the Visible logo, and the Magic TV logo, and it had a picture of a particular creator, and then it had a quote from that creator. 1914 didn't do that. I did. I reached out to a whole bunch of creators. When the project had been edited, I sent them the project and I said, I'm not asking you to review it, but can you look at it and can you give me a quote, please? That's all I would like. I would like a quote. And they sent me the quote back. And then I spent time and effort creating all of those graphics, putting them all together. Well, actually, my marketing department did, creating all of those graphics, creating the quotes, and then I shared them out on YouTube community. I shared them out on Facebook. I shared them out on Instagram. I shared them out absolutely everywhere, and they got retweeted by Murphy's, and they got reshared on Instagram by Dee, and put on stories and so on and so forth. But that's not something that the 1914 did. That's not something that Murphy's did. I did that myself. It took me hours. I had to reach out, make phone calls to people like Mark Oberon, make phone calls to people like Adam Wilber, contact them all, explain the situation, ask them to look at the product. Then I had to take it back. We had to create the graphics. I had to schedule them out. There's a lot of time and effort there that I did myself, because I wanted to try to the best of my ability to market the product. And somebody like Murphy's and Dee and everybody else will see that. They'll know that I'm not going to be the sort of guy that just goes, okay, market that, I'm going to go and sit back and count the money. That's not the thing. I put so much time and effort into pushing this out. How many times on this channel have I talked about Visible? I've talked about it in a couple of Q&As. I got Ryland to do a review on it. I did a rant on something based on Visible, and now here I am doing another video. And what are we talking about? We're talking about Visible. Every single time I do that, more people are buying the product. So that the next time I go to somewhere like 1914 or Murphy's or one of the other production companies, they see what I did and how I conducted myself with Visible. And now they're like, yeah, we absolutely want to work with you. So understand that you can't rely on the producers to market it. Some will, some won't, but you really have to do it yourself. Don't cry into your soup that the product's not being marketed. You need to put the effort in yourself. Number 8, we're almost there now, there's 9 points. Number 8 is continue to promote. Even after the shelf life of the product, continue to promote. Because we all know in magic what's old is new, but these tricks that have been out a while, they're still just as good. New people are coming into magic all of the time. I will continue to talk about Visible. Visible was created as something that people can buy into no matter when they get into magic, because we all know when you get into magic, the first thing you're advised to get is an invisible deck. Well, if you have a project which allows you to unlock the potential of that invisible deck, well, that's something that's probably going to be promoted to you as well. So I'm constantly going to be promoting Visible, which is why, another reason why I chose to put Visible through a company that doesn't do a buyout and buy the rights, but instead does sort of a royalty scheme over time, because I knew that this is potentially a product that continues to sell and continue to sell and continue to sell. So that was the best option for this particular product. So continue to promote it, continue to use, especially if it's a really good project, continue to promote it. Use it as social proof to show your reputation as a creator. Don't just go wham, bam, thank you, ma'am. You'll hear I still talk about gossip all the time. It's now 3 or 4 months old, but I still talk about gossip all the time. When I lecture, and I'm going to start doing more lectures, when I lecture, I will lecture on gossip. Continue to promote that product. And the final point is then, and it says right here, point 9, repeat from phase 1. Once you've done that and everything's done and the product's come out and lots of people have bought it and the reviews have come in, oh, and by the way, be active. If people are talking about it on Facebook, be active, reply to people. If people are talking about it on YouTube, be active, reply to them. If people are sending you emails, reply to the emails. If people are talking about it on the Magic Cafe, go on the Magic Cafe. It's going to be talked about on the Magic Cafe. You may as well be on there replying to people's questions and concerns. Magic Cafe, as much as I have my issues with the Magic Cafe, it is a great platform for creators to help promote their product. It really is. So it's really important that you do all of this stuff, but eventually you get to the end and you do it again. You do it again. You have something else ready. If you want to take being a creator seriously, don't just stop at one point, but continue to create and continue to create, and make sure the ideas are good. We talked about that in phase one or point one. Make sure the ideas are good, make sure they're ready, but constantly have something else that you're working on, or 2 or 3 things that you're working on that you can market in different ways. And then that will build your reputation. That will get you a reputation as a creator that brings out good magic, a bit like Richard Sanders. Everybody knows that when Richard Sanders brings a trick out, it's going to be good because he's earned that respect from people, over time. And that's what you want to do. Constantly be bringing out stuff that's good. Don't saturate the market with crap. That is not what we want here. Make sure that it's good quality material, and we can talk another day about creativity, but make sure that you're constantly going through that process. So there you go, guys. That is another Q&A in the bag. Thank you very much for watching this. I know this was a bit of a long one, but this is everything I know about marketing a product. It's everything I know about marketing a product to magicians and making it a success. Now it's over to you. Do you have any questions? I'd love to do a follow-on video to this, and maybe as a magic stuff. So I'd like to hear questions. Is there something that I've missed? Are there questions that you have? Let me know down below, and I will do a follow-on video as a magic stuff in the next couple of weeks. Also, any questions that were asked last week, I will answer them on next week's. We're going to be back to a normal format next week on next week's Q&A. And if you have any normal generic questions that you want to have asked, ask them in this thread, and I will get back to them next week as well. Thank you for continuing to support me, Magic TV, and any products that I bring out. I really appreciate it. Have an amazing day. You guys are awesome. Thanks very much for watching. Don't forget, at 9 o'clock tonight, I've got a review show special. At 2 o'clock, I've got shorts, and at 6 o'clock, I've got a live. 4 videos today. I'll see you again soon. My name's Craig from Magic TV.